Welcome to the show. Today we're talking to homegrown blues rock artist Ethan Askey. Stick around. Hello, I'm here with Ethan Askey, and we're going to talk about his new album that he's just released in the last year and all the successes he's had. Welcome, Ethan.
Thank you, Jamie.
So let's start with where did you start your musical journey, if you will?
I think I started my musical journey right here.
Yeah.
Well, in the East Kootenay, in Cranbrook, and at Wausau, where I spent all of my time as a youngster until I was 17. I'm a product of the Cranbrook Junior High, Parkland Junior High jazz and concert band. That's where I learned to play the trumpet, read music, and then later in grade 12, I was a slacker in high school. I was able to take an elective to learn the guitar as a break from physics and math and chemistry and whatnot. So you could say by the time I finished the Cranbrook High School system, I'd had some grounding in music.
Right. And so you met up with some fellows along the way as well and started making music with others?
Oh, well, here's the thing. Interesting part of that story is that when I was 20, my mom gave me as a birthday gift a harmonica because I had a guitar. And she was familiar with the music of the 60s and 70s that had guitar and harmonica, Bob Dylan, Neil Young. And maybe I'd mentioned an interest in it. So all of a sudden I had a guitar and a harmonica, and I was her modern day troubadour wannabe. But really I played guitar longer in my life, but that harmonica became my real focus, my passion, because everywhere I went, and I traveled quite a bit then, I was working tree planting and river expedition guiding up north, traveling a bit around the world, and I always had a harmonica with me. So by virtue of that, by playing it a lot, I figured out the mysteries of that little instrument, because there are many mysteries to a harmonica, a diatonic blues harmonica, and I sort of unraveled those a bit, learned to play the thing, and it gave me so much joy everywhere I went. Even if I couldn't speak the language, I could speak the language of music with people. And so from that point on, as a 20-something-year-old, where I landed in Whistler, of all places, was my first actual band. And for 2 years, we had a band. We brought that band into Cranbrook and the Kootenays on a couple of tours, ski town tours.
What was that band called?
That was called Dank Nugs. The umlaut over the A and the U, Dankonuga.
Right,
but kind of a psychedelic band based in the Coast Mountains. And original music and the things we covered included Frank Zappa, Pink Floyd, The Grateful Dead, fun, a good writer, and a great solid band. But that was my first exposure to playing rock and roll music of a type. And I sang a bit, but mostly just played the harmonica as a keyboard.
Well, and the blues harp seems to have now become a mainstay of your instruments. I mean, you play guitar too, and you play trumpet, but the harp is, I mean, looking at your equipment, I noticed that you got many harps, including chromatics. So you play both of those, and it kind of leads us to, you've been working hard at this, and now you have an album that's really making its way in the charts, and it's really focused on your original music and the personal stories that you have to tell.
Indeed.
Why don't you tell us a little bit more about the album?
Love to. The album really was a product of the great pause, 2020 to 2022. I had my dad's health was failing at the time, and one of the things we did together in his final months was we listened to a lot of music here, where we're doing this interview, and I was playing on my guitar, running songs past him, and I'd given him an idea of a song I was working on to do with the legalization of marijuana, and he not only gave me the title for the song, he gave me 3 verses for the song, and I've incorporated those almost wholesale into the song Stoners. So the album really began with me wanting to, as my dad leaving this world, really wanted to record that song. It was very special to me. And so that's the song Stoners, co-written with my dad. Spending that time with my dad, another very personal song, was welling up within me in that same period of time. And I had other songs that had been banging around my brain for some months and years, but I'd never really fancied myself an artist. I was always a performer and usually a sideman. Since my 20s, I mentioned to you that I'd jammed in with bands and joined bands and been the harmonica player and backing singer for a band. But several years ago, I decided that I wanted to form a new band, and this band was Mojo, a bunch of great guys. And I didn't see this coming, but it turned out that I was going to be the singer in the band. I thought I'd be one of the singers, but I was the primary and pretty much sole singer in the band. So I kind of found a voice as well as being a singer. And then I had these songs that I wanted to put into the world. And so lo and behold, I eventually had become a singer-songwriter. And when I started with the album, my dad's song and a couple others, I had to rely at the time, and this is 2021, on remote production of the songs. So I recorded in one of my bandmates' studios, a professional recording studio, my pieces, the vocal and the harmonica. And then the co-producer of the album with me, Steve Mariner, a Juno-winning, very celebrated blues, roots, and rock artist based in Toronto. He, from his end in Toronto, the Askey recording company with Jimmy Boskill of Sheepdogs and Blue Rodeo, they, in their studio, did all the guitar playing, bass playing, drums, and keyboards added to my music. So it was 2 remote studios, and then he mixed it all together, and I had a 4-song EP. And I was so excited with the product of that work together that I decided to make it into a full-blown 10-track album with the other songs I'd had and was still developing. And to that end, the pandemic eased up on the health restrictions. Steve Mariner was able to travel again and tour across the country. So on his next 2 passes through Calgary from Toronto, I snagged him into the studio locally, and we built out the remainder of the album. So the album was completed in early 2022.
Right. So the EP that you had, was that sort of the first taste of really doing your own material and building it all together. And I was noticing too that of course, the title track here, Walk When You Want to Run, really caught my interest. And you started telling a bit of a story about being in Chicago and how that it inspired this song. And that'd be something I'd love to hear a little bit about.
Well, it was a fun chapter. It's a story that I'd told fellow musicians and anybody who'd listen over the years. I decided getting a bit long on the tooth of that story, I should really tell it once and for all in a song format. So Walk When You Want to Run tells the story of a meeting in Calgary back when I was just learning to play the harmonica. So I was 21, 22. I'd just been figuring out a few licks on it. I went from Cranbrook to Calgary to the King Eddie, Calgary's then home of the blues,
right.
The venerable old King Edward Hotel. And Junior Wells was touring through there from Chicago. And he's one of my heroes. His partnership with Buddy Guy is legendary. He was a band member of Muddy Waters classic band in the late 50s, early 60s, I guess it was. And so he was coming to town. I went to hear him play. In between sets, we struck up a conversation. We seemed to hit it off. He gave me his phone number and his address and said, if you ever come to Chicago, call me. And I did years later. By that time, I learned to play the harmonica. I was his guest at clubs. I played every night I was there. I had such a wonderful first trip to Chicago. And I brought him a gift of smoked salmon from the airport in a decorative box. Right, yeah. And I gave it to him Friday night when he was playing at Rosa's Lounge. On Saturday night, we met again at Buddy Guy's club. He told me that he'd brought home that fish to his mama. And she was in her 80s. He was in his 60s at the time. She spent that Saturday all day picking away at that 4-ounce bit of smoked salmon with a pot of coffee.
What a great gift.
Oh, man. She loved it. And he told me so. And I said, well, tell you what, Junior, when I come back next year, and I'm coming back next year, I'm bringing you a real fish. Right. And at the time, I was guiding up on northern rivers, these expedition trips. And we ended one of our trips, the Tachinshini-Elsik trip, at Dry Bay, Alaska. We're at a fishing processing plant. And so I got a big spring salmon, brought it home, flash froze it. And so February of whatever that was, 1995, I went back to Chicago and I had this big fish under my arm.
Nice.
And I called the number for Junior and he was off on tour, but his mom answered the phone. And I said I could see where she lived. I had the address and I could see it was just off the train line. And I would travel from the north to the deep south to their house and I would deliver her the fish. And she said, you take a taxi here. She says, you're a white man, are you not? I said, I am indeed.
And I noticed really that the lyrics really capture that moment where if you were in Chicago and you started walking down the street, towards the south side, it's not the safest place in the world.
Well, right downtown Chicago, you can feel pretty safe. They have a lot of people traveling through Chicago, enjoying the architecture and the restaurants and whatnot. But when you get a little south into the 20s south, you get the University of Chicago. But you get further south than that, and you get neighborhoods that don't see a lot of folks that look like me down there, just tourists strolling through. At the time, I was running those rivers, those river boats. I had a big thick neck. I'm rowing a boat all day long. I had short hair. I looked like a Marine probably, and so I ignored her advice. She said, "You take a taxi," but I was cheap. I was young, and I could see the train was 3 blocks away from where they lived on East 72nd. So south, deep south. And so then I got my train ticket and the young woman at the ticket booth said to me, where are you going? You take a taxi. That's the opening line of the song. Everyone's telling me, take a taxi.
You take a taxi, or doom wasn't mine. If you go to East 72nd in the south side, when the train left me looking down that winter street in the sun, you gotta walk when you wanna run.
But young, dumb, foolish, more bush smart than street smart, as I say in the song, I had to walk those 3 blocks, and that was the longest walk I think I'd ever had. Right. And I felt just like I was back up in the bush in bear country, because when you're in bear country, you can smell bears. They're stinky. You can see their fur on the trees. You can see their footprints and their scat. You're in bear country.
Where they've been digging their marking trees and so forth.
Yeah, and digging for ground squirrels and whatnot. You can see and smell signs of bear everywhere. And I said to the fellows that I eventually met down there, I felt like I was walking through bear country, and I just had to keep walking. And they said, you're right. You're in bear country. So,
the album is also, when I think about it, it really has an international flavor to it, because there's this other song that you've been doing that Tuvimos. That really impressed me. I love the rhythmic stuff there. Why don't you talk a little bit about that one, how it came to be?
Well, inspired by real events, I'm aware, I wanted a love song on there, and I wanted something Latin on there because I love Latin music. And there's an opportunity to play the chromatic in a nice kind of jazzy way. and I wanted a love duet. And so I invited to join me on this Yolanda Sargent of Calgary's duo, sort of hip-hop, lo-fi, soul group, Sargent and Comrade. Yolanda's voice is a wonderful foil to mine. She's got a really cool voice, and higher register, me and my baritone, and we sing back and forth. This tale I'd developed of a global love gone wrong, and a fellow from our region, I say from Montana, fell in love with a woman from Europe in a sunny clime in Antigua, Guatemala, is the setting for the story, and how it all started so great. It's great when you're in your 20s and you're falling in love and palm trees are swaying and all of that. But then reality sets in and time passes and hearts harden or whatever happens. People grow, evolve, and the bottom falls out.
That touched me personally because I fell in love with a tourist in Cozumel.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Great song, I loved it, and it kind of leads me to think about your more recent performances,
yep.
And of course now working with your band, The Elevators.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be a kind of a segue towards that, and how that came to be, and who those fellas are. And...
Oh well, the band The Elevators is a really happy happenstance in that I've known all these guys for decades.
All right.
It came about really thanks to Fisher Peak Performing Arts Society that I had an opportunity to come here more than once to perform music in different band incarnations. And for the last one, I'd had the album out for just a few months, and I really wanted to play my original music instead of other people's music. And so I'd asked these fellas to join me and see if we can't pull off a set of music together. And the band came out of that. So I'd known Ferdy and Keith through the Mayuk Mania crowd, a bunch of our friend group here. We have a community of folks making music, and you're part of that community out, east of town in the Mayuk Valley. And so bluegrassers, folk musicians, lovely people. But Ferdy and Keith were known to me through that. Of course, Ferdy has his background in the Vancouver community as well. But all of us originate from Cranbrook, and Ben Dunn, who lives in Kimberley now, or Marysville, he also was almost a neighbor of mine growing up, a few years younger than me. But I knew his brother and went through school all the way through school with his brother. But I'd also played with the Honeymans that Ben was part of back in the late 90s, mm-hmm. and recorded with them as a hired gun for their album Stomping Grounds. And so for him to basically retire from music for 20 years to focus on his work and his family outside of music, and then come back to music and join our band along with Ferdy Belland and Keith Larson, Ben Dunn. I've got, as far as I can tell, some of the best musicians anywhere, let alone the East Kootenay. And because the music I've made with this album, again, I made it with Steve Mariner and Jim Boskill, Mike Clark in Calgary, a sax player, all these fantastic musicians. And so it's kind of a studio album, hard to replicate and play live. But with this band, we can successfully, I think. Yeah.
And so you've just come off of what I would call a mini tour, right? So
3 dates, yeah, sure.
And that's great. So where to from here when it comes to...
We're going to do another tour out to the coast and back. Last summer during August, during the wildfires, we had to honor our commitments. So it felt like it was the Scorched Earth tour. We were almost dodging and weaving around, forest fires. We had to take alternate routes and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But we went out to the coast and back. We played a really really cool few gigs in Squamish, in Mission at the historic Dewdney, and in Kamloops. And we're going to head out there again, either in August or September. But between now and then, I think we're going to focus on growing the trap line, as I call it, closer to home here in the East and West Kootenays. We've done another road trip out to Nelson and back, and onto Kootenay Lake, Balfour Beach Inn. I think we're going to focus for the next 6 months, anyway, 5 months, on playing these local, regional, interior BC and Alberta gigs. And then we've got some offers in Saskatchewan, on the coast, and places further afield. So I think in 2025 we might stretch our legs, and by that time we should have another album out. We'll have we're going to the studio in March to record at least 1 or 2 more songs. You mentioned the album has had some charting success. It's true. It's been really surprising and welcome, of course.
Yeah, of course.
But the album is being played far and wide, both coasts of America and in between. The UK, Australia, Northern Europe really seems to like it. And so the blues DJs predominantly, also alt country, that swing like that, it's kind of a alt country vibe. They have the album, they like the album, so they keep playing the album, and now they nudge me for more because they say we love it, but it's it's been a steady rotation. Give us some more, and so that's part of our motivation.
Publish or perish.
Yeah, right.
It's the old adage.
Yeah.
Right.
This
and
week,
so,
by the way, may I just boast that again, just didn't see it coming, but this week it's number 3 in the top 50 Canada albums on the Roots Music Report. Number 4, I should say, number 3 song was Swing Like That. Currently, this week, the song Till the Money Runs Out, which is Tom Waits' penned song, the only cover on the album of original music. That song is number 3 in Canada on the top 50 charts, and the album is number 4 in top 50 Canada albums.
That's exciting.
And worldwide, it's number 33.
Fantastic.
Still, after 22 months of being out since release.
And you have a musical footprint in Europe too, right? You've been on a tour there and with a different band, but so perhaps the name Ethan Askey is getting around.
Geez, I'm small potatoes. So I don't know if it's getting around. Maybe in very small circles, in the blues DJ circles. But when last November we did our small tour in northern Germany with Jimmy and the Sleepers, an Edmonton-based original blues band that I've been part of the past couple of years. We did make an impression on them, and our Hamburg show, which was our anchor show there, our biggest show, there were all sorts of festival bookers and who's who of the European kind of blues community came to that show in Hamburg, and on the strength of that performance, they've invited us back to headline 2 major festivals this spring in May. So we'll be playing in Baden, Switzerland, at the Baden Blues Fest, and we'll be playing in Eutin. The Eutin Blues Fest, which is up in the Baltic coast. So we have those 2 anchor dates, and we're filling in, connecting the dots in between Central Europe. So we're looking forward to that in a big way.
I guess you're going to have to permanently have your jump bag ready to go.
There you go.
So, well, Ethan, it's been fantastic to talk to you. Anything else that you kind of would like to tell the audience?
Well, harmonicas, the most mysterious of all instruments. In fact, I'll be teaching a workshop with some of Canada's best musicians, instructors at Hornby Island this spring, and the title of one of my workshops is The Most Mysterious of All Instruments, because it's the only one you can't see any strings or buttons or valves or anything on.
It looks so small. It looks so simple.
Right.
It's not.
And it's super simple to make noise on the thing. But what you realize is that you're only working with a very small number of notes. But it's the notes that physically aren't there in the design of the harmonica. It's the notes that you have to create out of the ether that are the cool notes, the blues notes.
Right,
and
the bending.
The bending and and the halftones, And so I would say to anybody, if you want to get a start in music, you don't play another instrument, the harmonica is something it offers a lifetime of learning and a sound. And the other thing is making music with people. I'm so grateful to my Cranbrook community in Mayuk, you and all the folks I know in this ecosystem here, because I'm a product of it, and it's given me lifelong richness of just, whether it's sitting at home strumming my guitar or making music with people in a bluegrass circle or on a stage in a club in Europe. I'm just so grateful to have music in my life.
Well, gotta wish you every success in the near future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Try to swing like that. I've been Bye.